On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched the largest joint military operation in the Middle East since the invasion of Iraq.
Middle East and risks a forever war of the kind Donald Trump had vowed to end.
They hit Tehran. They hit military bases across the country. They targeted the compound of Iran's supreme leader, and Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, the man who ran Iran for 36 years, is dead. Iranian state media confirmed it this morning.
حضرت امام خامنه ای با نوشیدن شهد گوارای شهادت در ماه مبارک رمضان به ملکوت اعلا پیوست. شورای عالی امنیت ملی در این زمینه بیانیه‌ای به این شهر صادر کرده است.
Iran fired back. Missiles hit U.S. bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE. Explosions were heard over Dubai, Riyadh, and Tel Aviv. This isn't a skirmish. This is a new kind of war, and almost nobody saw it coming this fast. To understand why this happened now, you need to rewind about 10 weeks. In late December, Iran's economy hit a wall. The rial collapsed, prices spiked, and people took to the streets, not hundreds, not thousands, but millions, in over 100 cities. These were the largest protests Iran had seen since the 1979 revolution, and they weren't just about groceries. Protesters were calling for the end of the regime. The Iranian government responded the way it always has: live ammunition, shotguns, drones. The IRGC and Basij forces killed thousands of their own citizens. Estimates range wildly. Iran's government says around 3,000 dead. U.S. officials say the number could be 10 times that. The truth is probably somewhere nobody wants to look too closely at. On January 13th, Trump publicly backed the protesters. 2 weeks later, he sent an armada to the region, 2 carrier strike groups, over 150 aircraft, dozens of warships. It was the biggest U.S. military buildup in the Middle East in over 2 decades. Washington put 3 demands on the table: stop all uranium enrichment, limit your ballistic missile program, and cut off Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis. Indirect negotiations happened in Muscat, Oman in early February. Both sides called them a good start. Then, on February 28th, while diplomats were still exchanging notes, the bombs started falling. The joint operation had 2 names. Israel called it Roaring Lion. The Pentagon called it Operation Epic Fury. The targets were specific and coordinated: IRGC command facilities, air defense systems, missile and drone launch sites, military airfields, and, critically, the compounds of Iran's top leadership. Israel says its strikes killed the commander of the IRGC, Iran's defense minister, and the secretary of its National Security Council. Those aren't random generals, that's the inner circle. The biggest claim, though, was about Khamenei himself. Trump posted on Truth Social that Khamenei was dead. Netanyahu said at a press conference that Israel had struck his compound directly. Iran initially denied it. State media said Khamenei was steadfast and commanding operations, but hours later, Iranian state television confirmed it. Khamenei was killed in his Tehran compound. He was 86. Iran declared 40 days of national mourning. President Pezeshkian called him a martyr and vowed revenge. His daughter, son-in-law, and grandchild were also killed. So were at least 7 senior defense and intelligence officials, according to Israeli sources. Ali Shamkhani, one of Iran's most powerful security figures, is confirmed dead. The regime didn't just lose its leader, it lost a large chunk of the people who knew how to run the country. Here's what makes this different from every previous round of Israel-Iran hostilities. In April 2024, they traded strikes, contained, calibrated. Everyone stepped back. In June 2025, there was a brief 12-day war, serious but limited. Both sides found an off-ramp. This time, there's no off-ramp being offered. Trump said the strikes will continue uninterrupted throughout the week or as long as necessary. Netanyahu said the operation will last until the Iranian people are free. Both leaders explicitly called for regime change. That's not deterrence, that's a stated goal to end a government. Iran's response was immediate. Dozens of ballistic missiles fired toward Israel and U.S. bases across the Gulf. The IRGC declared that all American and Israeli assets in the Middle East are now legitimate targets. Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq threatened to attack U.S. bases. The Houthis announced they'd resume strikes in the Red Sea. Most of Iran's retaliatory missiles were intercepted. The U.S. military says it suffered no casualties and only light damage. In Israel, one person was injured by shrapnel. One woman was reportedly killed in Tel Aviv by a direct missile hit. The UAE reported one civilian killed by falling debris from an interception. 4 people were killed in Syria. But on the Iranian side, the numbers are much worse. State media reported at least 201 killed and over 700 wounded within the first 12 hours. An elementary girls' school in Minab was hit, reportedly killing over 60 students. If those numbers hold, this will be one of the most scrutinized strikes in modern military history. So, where does this go from here? There are 3 things to watch. First, the proxy question. Iran's network of allied militias, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Kataib Hezbollah in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen, haven't fully entered the fight yet. If they do, this isn't a US-Iran-Israel war anymore. It's a regional war that pulls in Lebanon, Iraq, Yemen, and potentially the shipping lanes that carry a fifth of the world's oil. The Houthis have already said they'll restart Red Sea attacks. Kataib Hezbollah has threatened US bases in Iraq. Whether those threats turn into sustained action will determine the size of this conflict. Second, the succession crisis. This one's no longer hypothetical. Khamenei is dead, and Iran is now in the most dangerous leadership vacuum it's faced since 1979. On paper, Iran has a plan. The Constitution says a 3-person council takes over: the president, the head of the judiciary, and a senior cleric chosen by the Guardian Council. That council has now been formed. The Assembly of Experts, an 88-member panel of clerics, is supposed to pick a permanent successor. But here's the problem. The assembly can't easily meet while bombs are still falling. Several of the people who would normally run this process were themselves targeted in the strikes. And the candidates who could replace Khamenei are already in a quiet power struggle. Ali Larijani, who Khamenei reportedly appointed to run national security affairs just days before his death, is the most powerful civilian left standing. Mojtaba Khamenei, the dead leader's son, has deep ties to the IRGC and was widely seen as his father's preferred heir. But he's never held office, and putting a son in the role would look like dynasty politics. Then there's the IRGC itself. If the clerics can't get organized fast enough, the Revolutionary Guard may simply take control. That turns Iran from a theocracy into a military dictatorship overnight, and a wounded military regime with ballistic missiles and nothing left to lose is the scenario that keeps defense planners up at night. Third, the global economy. Gold jumped past $5,300 the moment strikes were confirmed. Oil prices are spiking. If Iran tries to close or disrupt the Strait of Hormuz, which handles roughly 20% of the world's oil prices will hit levels that make 2022 look calm. Even the threat of disruption moves markets. Every day this continues, the economic pressure builds. There's also a legal dimension that's going to get louder. Multiple countries and international bodies have called these strikes a violation of international law. Oman's foreign minister, who literally was mediating between the US and Iran days ago, publicly said Washington should not get sucked in further and called the strikes illegal. The UN Secretary General condemned both the initial attacks and Iran's retaliation. Whether those legal arguments gain traction or get ignored will depend on how the next 72 hours play out. This story is moving fast. By the time you watch this, the situation may have already shifted. Redline will be covering every major development as it happens. If you think Iran's proxies are going to stay on the sidelines, or if you think they're about to go all in, tell me why in the comments. I want to know what you're seeing that I might be missing. This is Redline, We'll be back Thursday with a full breakdown of what this means for the rest of the world.